Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Nora Peel. I'm the Director of Literary Programs for the Bay Area Book Festival. Thank you so much for being here today. One of the great things about, one of the few great things about the pandemic is that we all figured out how to use technology to bring people to spaces where they might not be able to travel physically. And so I'm so pleased to be able to introduce this session today. We were able to do this in part with the support of Ability Central, which gave us a grant to cover the technology for this session and ASL interpretation throughout the festival. So I want to be sure to thank them for that. I also want to note that Bookshop West Portal is set up outside. They have copies of Alice's book and special signed book plates, so you can pick one of those up if you visit them. They also have many other copies of books for presenters who have been here throughout the weekend, so please do stop by and visit them after the session today. As I mentioned, we received some financial support in order to produce this session. We didn't ask you to contribute a thing when you walked in the door. This session, as well as all of our daytime sessions at the festival this year, were entirely free to attend. We really want this festival to reflect our organization's values of inclusivity, access, and community. So this year we're doing that by lowering the barriers to entry and offering all of our programming free of charge. We hope then that you'll consider joining us by making a donation, if you're able to do so, to support the work that we do. We've made it really easy to do that. We have a mobile donation site at baybookfest.org, or as you go around the festival for the rest of the day today, keep your eyes open for volunteers who have very convenient tap to give signage where you can literally just tap your credit card and make an instantaneous, tax-deductible, secure donation to our organization. Regardless, I'm just so happy to see you all here today. And now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Alice Wong and her interviewer, Yomi Sachiko Rong.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm Yomi Sachiko Rong. It is so wonderful to share this space today with all of you. And I want to extend my appreciation to the Book Festival team for making a way for us to be together virtually and in real time. And what an absolute honor and treat for me to be in conversation with my friend Alice Wong. My relationship with Alice goes back about 15 years to my days as executive director of the Center for Independent Living, which is the nation's flagship disability rights advocacy organization founded right here in Berkeley in 1972. Alice and I used to exchange pleasantries at disability cultural events held at the Ed Roberts campus. And then seemingly out of the blue one day, she invited me to do a recording for her Disability Visibility Project. And it was in that intimate sound booth at the San Francisco Public Library that our CRIP kinship was rooted. We discovered that we share many experiences as disabled women of color taking space in arenas traditionally dominated by white voices and perspectives. And we made a pact right then and there to always support, uplift, and encourage one another. And so from that moment, I've been honored to conspire and collaborate with Alice on various projects, and really to witness her emergence as a luminary in the realm of disability storytelling, media making, and community shaping. Alice is a co-partner in numerous ventures, including Crip the Vote, a nonpartisan online movement encouraging the political participation of disabled people, and one of my personal favorites, Access is Love, with co-partners Mia Mingus and Sandy Ho. And that is a campaign that aims to help build a world where accessibility is understood as an act of love instead of a burden or an afterthought. Every single thing that Alice imagines, dreams, touches, and collaborates on showcases not only her incredible community organizing skills, but her unique and singular magic for relationship building. She carries out all of this creative work from her home in San Francisco's Mission District, using social media and other digital tools in such nuanced in masterful ways you know that only a disabled person who has had to adapt their entire lives could really pull this off. Alice proves that there are so many ways to participate in social justice movements besides marching in the street. Her memoir, Year of the Tiger, invites readers to understand just how she does this and what led her to this remarkable activist life. Please welcome my friend and comrade in political struggle, Alice Wong.
Hi everyone, I'm so excited to be here at the Bay Area Book Festival with my dear friend Jimmy Wong. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate virtually, and I want to thank the ASL interpreter and captioner as well. I also want to let you all know that I am using a text-to-speech app to speak, so please bear with me. There may be pauses and the app may mispronounce some words. Let's do this, Yummy.
I actually like the way that app says yummy. I like it. Alice, you are widely and affectionately regarded as a disabled oracle. How did that identity marker shape your approach to constructing this memoir?
I feel like I'm both a disabled cyborg and oracle. Before the internet, I was already a disabled cyborg, a person tethered to technology inside and outside of my body. I have metal rods in my back from a spinal fusion surgery and used a power wheelchair to get around. When I was a teenager, the internet became widely available and I got a dial-up modem which opened a whole new world for me. I stopped flying in my 20s because of the toll it took on my body, in addition to the stress and dehumanization that comes from obliged treatment at airports and hotels. For a while, and even now, I feel a twinge of envy when I see friends at events and videos of people on vacation in far-off places. In 2015, I received an email inviting me to an event at the White House celebrating the 25th anniversary of the ADA, and I didn't reply because I stopped flying. Maria Town, who worked at the White House at the time, reached out and followed up with me because they arranged to have a Beam Pro telepresence robot so that I could attend virtually. It was a thrilling experience. By pressing arrow buttons from my keyboard, I navigated from the blue room, green room, and other parts of the White House. I said hello to friends who came from all over the country who arrived for the event. And the best part was I got a photo with President Barack Obama. Afterwards, an article in Wired.com said I was the first robot visitor to the White House, so that's a bit of history I'll always be a part of. Some friends joke that I am the robot overlord of the disability community, and it's a title I wholly embrace. Disabled people are oracles. I wrote this in 2020 during the beginning of the pandemic, but it has always been true. Disabled people transmit wisdom from their ancestors in conversation with the past, present, and future. Disabled people, in addition to people from other marginalized communities, know what it is like to survive in times of political, economic, and environmental crises. We foretold how high-risk people would be rendered expendable by the state during the pandemic. We knew how hybrid and remote options opened up access for everyone despite being told by institutions, conferences, and organizations that it was infeasible or too expensive in the past. We know that interdependence, community care, the belief that all people have inherent value, and how vulnerability is a form of strength is the way forward. Non-disabled people thought they were invincible and embraced the return to normal when it was never normal for many. Oracles, by telling their stories, uncomfortable truths, and visions for the future, are met with indifference, hostility, and doubt by a public invested in the status quo and afraid of change. Oracles create and hold space. They time travel with their imagination, creativity, and innovation. And a lot of disabled people live in precarity. You and I know so many of our beloved friends and comrades who died prematurely due to lack of resources and structural ableism. When my anthology Disability Visibility published in 2020, I wanted to build on the momentum and propose another book, but I didn't want to follow up with another anthology immediately because I needed to shift gears and do something different and creative. I was a bit intimidated at writing my own memoir, but I tried to make it my own and have as much fun as possible. Because books take time to write and publish, I realized in 2 years' time it would be the year of the tiger, the zodiac sign I was born under, which is a big thing in Chinese culture. And that's when it hit me: the year of the tiger was the perfect title for my memoir, and that it was time to look back on the last 48 years of my life. I found that being an editor and writer has helped me tremendously because the skill sets from both feed into each other. I made a spreadsheet and started collecting links to my work, and I was really stunned at its quality and quantity. This also further confirmed that this was the right time and that I deserve a chance to tell my story in a longer form. To make things feel less overwhelming, I thought of my memoir as an anthology of my life, a collection of new essays, past work, and conversations I've had with people over the years. To answer your question, one of the primary purposes of writing this memoir is to leave something behind. I feel like I am in a constant race against time because I was never meant to live this long. Ever since I was a child, my doctors told my parents I wouldn't reach adulthood, so I couldn't even imagine a future for myself, a future as a middle-aged person. I am extremely aware of the privilege of being here with you all today at the age of 49, and I want this book to document where I am at this point in my life, with the knowledge that my story will be out there long after I am gone, and maybe it'll reach and affect people. Especially with the pandemic, I wanted to capture my wisdom and truths, because when we're living in it, we forget how historic everything is. And as a fan of speculative fiction, I summon all of my witchy powers and look toward the future, which is a lifeline for me. In order for many of us to survive, we have to dream and imagine how another world is possible. I believe that's the first step to building a world that is grounded in liberation, justice, and interdependence. And while I may be one disabled oracle, there is a collective wisdom and community that I am a part of that is prescient and powerful. The question for everyone here is if you are willing to listen and learn. And on another note, disabled people are still not represented in the publishing industry or as authors. So much expertise, creativity, and insights are overlooked or erased. We are nowhere close to reaching parity, and I think that says a lot about whose stories matter and who gets to tell their own stories. Yumi, you are a beautiful writer and have a background in journalism. Do you consider yourself as an oracle, and what are your thoughts about the power of storytelling?
Thank you for that beautiful response and for the question to me. My first career was as a newspaper writer, a news writer for daily newspapers. And I wouldn't say I considered myself an oracle at that time, but the way I understand it now, the answer would be absolutely. Although my work as a journalist was not about telling my story. It was really about telling stories to help shape and form communities, to help people understand their world, understand what was happening. And I took that very seriously, and that's what drew me to news writing, was really being part of shaping a community through truth telling, through helping to explain the conditions that affect people's lives and helping people make decisions about everything from local election to school boards to where to send their children to school to what was happening in the housing market and just how everything in the community shaped and affected everything else, how everything was interconnected. And so because my training in writing, if you call it, was first with journalism, it's sort of creativity and turning the lens on yourself is really kind of beat out of you. It's like you're not supposed to do that. So I spent, 30 years or so, or 25, 30 years in the world of journalism, either working in newsrooms or editing or writing columns where focus was not on me, it was on other people. And for a long time, I really tried not to write about disability at all because I didn't want to be ghettoized as like the disabled person that can only write about disability. But now that I'm out of newsrooms and I'm doing many different things with my life, and I do so much political organizing and disability justice dreaming, I do look for and embrace opportunities to tell parts of my story, to tell parts of my story that I think contribute to the fullness of what it means to live this disabled life, because it isn't all about trauma and discrimination. That is part of it, but it's also about love and family and joy and sensuality and community and wackiness. And it's about so many things. It's so full and multifaceted. And so I think in that way, yes, I'm an oracle, as many of us are. So thank you for asking. One of my favorite chapters or sections of your memoir is called Future Notice. And in Future Notice, you project several really hilarious and bold dreams about your legacy. One of them is to be the editor of a disability-specific imprint at a major publishing house. Can you say more about this?
For folks in the audience who haven't read the book, I have a chapter titled Future Notice where I write my own obituary when I die at the age of 96. I imagine what the next 48 years of my life would be like. As I just said earlier, I was never encouraged to think about my future, and I firmly believe that the power of manifestation has kept me creative and alive so far. If it's okay, I'd like to read a short excerpt of that chapter. Quote, at the tender age of 96, in the year of the tiger 2070, Alice Wong died. Oracle, storyteller, cyborg, troublemaker, activist, night owl, Alice was the firstborn daughter of Henry and Bobby Wong, who immigrated from Hong Kong to Indiana in the 1970s. Alice moved to San Francisco in 1997 for graduate school and the Bay Area disability community. San Francisco became her home for many decades. In 2014, Alice founded the Disability Visibility Project, which led to a blog, a podcast, and a series of books, television shows, feature films, and documentaries. In 2026, Alice became the editor-in-chief of the first disability-centered imprint for a major U.S. publisher. Along with many other disabled editors, writers, and colleagues, the imprint helped usher in what is considered the first of several golden ages of disability publishing. With the progression of her disability, Alice moved to a zero-gravity capsule on the moon in 2045 as a member of the second Cribs in Space cohort of scientists, creators, and explorers. During the past 2 decades, Alice receded from public life, preferring to amplify and support the next generation of disabled cyborgs. Instead of flowers, donations can be made to your local animal shelter, food bank, library, or mutual aid collective. For the latest information on the multidimensional interstellar memorial organized by the Cabal, a pre-selected group of Alice's friends and family, go to the Disability Visibility Orb. It will be a week-long online and in-person dance party, film festival, feast, orgy, and celebration. Please contact the Cabal for permissions, requests, or questions, as members know her wishes best and want to prevent any inaccurate coverage of Alice's life and work. Enjoy all of Alice's good shit, and may you create some good shit as well. End quote. So this is one of my many big dreams, to be an editor-in-chief of an imprint that is focused on work by disabled writers. It takes a lot of work to make any dream or goal a reality. I've had multiple conversations and revised several proposals, but there's nothing on the horizon just yet. Those of you who enjoyed Year of the Tiger and would like to see more books like it, you can contact the publisher, which is Vintage Books, or tag them on social media. Overall, the best thing you can do is to continue to read and buy books by disabled people and share your enthusiasm with your friends and family. Here are 4 recommendations. First is Black Disability Politics by Dr. Sami Shock. From the publisher's website, quote, "In Black Disability Politics, Sami Shock explores how issues of disability have been and continue to be central to Black activism from the 1970s to the present. Shock shows how Black people have long engaged with disability as a political issue deeply tied to race and racism. She points out that this work has not been recognized as part of the legacy of disability justice and liberation because Black disability politics differ in language and approach from the mainstream white-dominant disability rights movement. Drawing on the archives of the Black Panther Party and the National Black Women's Health Project alongside interviews with contemporary Black disabled cultural workers, Shock identifies common qualities of Black disability politics, including the need to ground public health initiatives in the experience and expertise of marginalized disabled people so that they can work in anti-racist, feminist, and anti-ableist ways. Prioritizing an understanding of disability within the context of white supremacy, Shock demonstrates that the work of Black disability politics not only exists but is essential to the future of Black liberation movements. End quote. Second is Just Care, Messy Entanglements of Disability, Dependency, and Desire by Dr. Kemi Nishida. From the publisher's website, quote, "The structure of care," Nishida writes, "is deeply embedded in and embodies the cruel social order, based on disability, race, gender, migration status, and wealth, that determines who survives or deteriorates. Simultaneously, many marginalized communities treat care as the foundation of activism. Using interviews, focus groups, and participant observation with care workers and people with disabilities, Just Care looks into lives unfolding in the assemblage of Medicaid long-term care programs, community-based care collectives, and bed activism. Just Care identifies what care does, and asks, how can we activate care justice, or just care where people feel cared affirmatively and care being used for the well-being of community and for just world making? End quote. The last 2 are by Leah Lakshmi Peepsnasamar Sinha. The first title is The Future is Disabled, Prophecies, Love Notes and Morning Songs. From the publisher's website, quote, "In the future is disabled," the author asks some provocative questions. What if, in the near future, the majority of people will be disabled, and what if that's not a bad thing? And what if disability justice and disabled wisdom are crucial to creating a future in which it's possible to survive fascism, climate change, and pandemics and to bring about liberation? End quote. The second book title by Leah is Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice. From the publisher's website, quote, Care Work is a mapping of access as radical love, a celebration of the work that sick and disabled queer people of color are doing to find each other and to build power and community, and a toolkit for everyone who wants to build radically resilient, sustainable communities of liberation where no one is left behind. Yumi, what are your dreams and ambitions for the future? What will 96-year-old Yumi be like?
Well, like you, Alice, I was not expected to live into adulthood. I was not expected to live beyond 3 years old. That was considered like the outlying of my age of maturity. And so for a long time, it was just hard for me to envision a future. I didn't have a lot of models of people who looked like me. Oh, I didn't have many models or images of certainly Black disabled women or just disabled people of color that were holding careers and creating family and making adult life or even being grandparents. So it has always been hard for me to have a vision of the future that I could sort of mark as, oh, maybe that's what my life will look like. So, you know, I'm both trying to lean into the fact that I've made it to, you know, the age of 51, and some things are unfolding in my life that I never thought would happen. I have a baby that I'm raising. I have, you know, a home that I purchased. I have a career and community that I've cultivated that is really aligned with my values. And at the same time, I'm also really grounded in the reality of impermanence. And I've lost loved ones during this pandemic. And like nothing stays. And yeah, so I'm kind of holding both, like a dream for the future, for my future, and also understanding that the future could be the end of today or tomorrow. You know, at 96, you know, I don't know that I want to be 96, what that would look like, mostly because I'm concerned about care. I mean, one of the reasons I work so much and so hard is because I don't want to be shuttered away. I'm very afraid of institutionalization, as I know you are. And I'm doing everything that I can to prepare for a future where that doesn't have to happen, but I can't guarantee it. So it's, you know, I'm kind of grounded in reality of what's available to us as disabled folks, especially as we age, and also leaning into a future where maybe some things can shift. Thank you for that question. So Alice, in spite of your very large, outsized social media presence and your public visibility, I know you to be a private person. How did you simultaneously hold and push this boundary of privacy in order to share your personal story? Because that's a lot of what memoir is. It's letting people into your interior life.
In the introduction of Year of the Tiger, I addressed this directly to the reader. I wrote that this book will not reveal all of my traumas and innermost secrets and thoughts. I refuse to fall into the expected tropes of overcoming barriers or that a disabled life is simply one of suffering, challenges, discrimination, and stigma. While I have experienced all of these things, I was very selective about not delving too much into my past because some of those things are not for public consumption. I also critique the memoir itself and why there are so many memoirs by disabled people that are inspirational or trying to prove to non-disabled people that we are just like them or that we deserve dignity and respect. Those kinds of stories are centered on the non-disabled audience and what expectations non-disabled people have about what a disabled life is like. I am not interested in demonstrating my humanity and worth to anyone. My stories are inherently political and personal, and each chapter is about what I want to share and why. And this took me a long time to grow up and learn that it's okay to say no to requests for free labor or education. I welcome readers into my world, and if they learn something from my story and feel galvanized and want to take action, that would be awesome. No memoir can give a full sense of a person, but it is just a small sampling. And I would never pretend otherwise. In the end, I hope that people feel pleasure, joy, and surprise with my story. Right now I am working on my next anthology, which is titled Disability Intimacy, which will be available next February from Vintage Books. In the introduction for this anthology, I made the decision to reveal something very private that I have never written about before. It was scary, but I knew that it was the right context to share that part of my life with the reader. Some stories will never come to the fore, and some stories require the right time and place for it to come out. Listening to my gut and trying to resist the pressure to overshare, which is an unfair expectation of writers and people who are well known, are acts of discipline. It's hard, but it's the right practice for me. Yummy, you recorded a tender story with your mother through my oral history project, the Disability Visibility Project. You are also a contributor to Disability Intimacy and wrote an incredibly beautiful and vulnerable story. When I first approached you to write something for my anthology, what was your thought process on what you wanted to write about and the feelings you had after turning it in?
Well, I'll just first start to say visibility makes me incredibly uncomfortable. It's one thing to do political work, to be an activist, to be a community organizer, where your visibility is really tied to systems change or an action on behalf of a people, a population of people, a group of people you're in solidarity with. It's quite another thing, to reveal personal aspects of yourself. Like you, I'm very private. And I think it's a generational thing. Like I'm very uncomfortable with what I perceive as sort of oversharing of one's personal life on social media. And also sometimes I think that some of the things that are personal about me, like who would care to know? So I wrestled a little bit with what type of essay to contribute to your next anthology. I did like the direction that you gave all of the writers, the contributors, about thinking more expansively about intimacy, because it's not just about sex or romantic attachment. Intimacy takes so many shapes. You can embody it in so many different ways. And I'm having a particular experience that I'm going through now, which has brings up a lot of issues of intimacy and connection for me. And so I, kind of put that out on the line in that essay. And as you know, after I turned it in, I revised it a couple of times. I kind of fretted over things. And I'm still a little nervous about it being shared with a wider community, but it's out there now. And there was something kind of healing in writing about it and just sort of getting it out. So thank you for inviting me into that work. The Disability Visibility Project is the first to explore lived experiences of disabled life. Can you talk a little bit more about disability intimacy and what you hope to achieve with the essays that you've curated?
I am incredibly excited about this next anthology. I love editing as much as I love writing, and I feel like the skill sets complement one another. When I Googled the words disability intimacy, the first 2 pages of search results were about sex, romance, and sexual dysfunction. There are so many stories by disabled people about how they are just like everyone else when it comes to dating, sex, marriage, and parenting. There is so much more to intimacy, and disabled people experience all kinds of intimacy with themselves, their friends and family, and their community. I want to subvert and blow up what people think intimacy is. Like my first anthology, Disability Visibility, features first-person stories by disabled people from a cross-section of society and many who live at multiple marginalizations. Each piece in this anthology is unique, but one theme I observed throughout the entire manuscript is tenderness. There's such tenderness expressed by the contributors as they put so much labor and care in their stories. I delicately gathered and edited this book with sensitivity, knowing how many people put their trust in me. Being thoughtful, intentional, and generous are acts of intimacy we can give to one another. Yumi, what have you been excited about lately? What brings you joy and pleasure?
Oh, what brings me joy and pleasure in these pandemic times seems to shift seasonally. And, I think in the early days, what brought me little pieces of joy was just being able to connect with people and being real about my fears. That actually helped me survive the first year or 2 of the pandemic. Gardening, tending to my home, and then just heart tending, being attentive to my pod, my friends, brings me a lot of joy and pleasure. The things that bring me joy and pleasure now versus pre-pandemic are just so different. And for us and for so many people, the pandemic really is not over, despite what the government says. I mean, you and I, and you especially, are contributing to this conversation in the safety of your home, because it is not safe for you to be in public. It is not safe for many of us to be in closed spaces with people who are unmasked. And so I find pleasure and joy in the times that I am able to connect one-on-one with people, when I am able to see people in real time, because we have shared values around keeping each other safe. And there's so much intention and love that goes into those visits. That brings me pleasure and joy, being able to take long drives, play with my dog, and just wake up and take a breath every morning. Brings me a lot of pleasure and joy.
Yumi, thank you for speaking with me, my friend.
It is my honor and my pleasure, Alice. And that's going to conclude our program. We're going to give everybody a little bit of time back at the end of the day. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for your attention. And I hope that you will treat yourself and buy Alice's books, because, especially Year of the Tiger, because it's phenomenal, and it's unlike a memoir you've read before. So thank you, everybody.